I am unashamed. What about you?
Welcome back to Unashamed. I was laughing at Zach because I'm, watching him through my camera here, and he's put on like this heavy duty, some sort of jacket or something before this next podcast. I didn't know if you were doing a wardrobe change, Zach. Did you get cold, or you just trying
a little chilly in here? It was 50 degrees last night, so
wow.
It's that time of year. It was actually 50 degrees here, which was front page news. If we still had pages to read the news.
Well, this is just. I wouldn't call it heavy duty. I'd say this is more like a lightweight hoodie.
So I went dove hunting yesterday. It was the second day of dove season. Jay had a lead on some doves, and so we went. And so I took a shirt that I wore, long sleeves, because the mosquitoes were still out, which was kind of shocking. I mean, it's 51. I had another shirt that I thought once I got so hot and sweaty from dove hunting that I would wear on the way home. But when I got out of the truck, I put that other shirt on. I mean, when it's usually 95 degrees and the lows are 75 and then it's 51, I was like Burka Zach there. I mean, I put both shirts on, went out there.
Burka Zach.
Again, it's a lightweight hoodie. I wouldn't call it it's a little bit it's not an overkill. I mean,
yeah, it looks pretty burly.
It's thick inches.
So we killed a few doves. It was kind of an unusual hunt, but where we're at in Ephesians 5. So these guys, it was 3 guys, and they had their wives, Phil, and their kids. Of course, when we were meeting up, I looked at Jay like, "What have you got me into?" Because I mean, it was village. It looked like a village, of people from husband-wife teams with pretty young kids, and everybody had their guns. And so I told Jay, I said, wherever they post us up, we need to be pretty far away from that, just because I didn't want to get shot. And
which happens a lot during in hunts like this. I mean, not like fatally shot, but I'm saying like you get stung with other people
with pellets. Yeah, but now having said that, that was my inner fear. But these people were excellent hunters. It was completely safe. I watched them the whole time. Me and Jay, of course, by removing ourselves, creating a little distance for safety and just not knowing what we were involved in here. Well, they were in the hot spot. So we got strapped because more doves, which I broke a rule, when you don't follow the owner of the land or the captain of the ship, well, you're not on the exact spot. So my fears, Phil, cost us some dove. Me and Jay killed about 12 between us, and they killed each little family pod. They killed more than that. So, but it was a good time. But I really liked that because I thought, why are these kids such safety conscious? Why were they having such a good time? But I knew what went into that. The training, the love, the experience, the time spent. I mean, it's hard to get young youths that experienced in safety, and because dove hunting is chaotic. You don't know where they're coming from or where they're headed, and a lot of times they fly real low, and you got to watch out for where everybody's at, even though you're certain distances. But if somebody moves, I mean, I'm consciously looking at all that, and people don't take it quite as serious as other hunting because you're using bird shot, which is not real lethal unless you're close, but still you have to be 100% safety at all times. So it was a wonderful experience, and cool weather was nice. We got a mess of doves that I'm going to eat tonight. So it is that time of year of, football, colder weather, hunting season, which made me think of another thing, Phil. Jay called me later on that day and said, I had an interesting conversation with your dad, talking about you. I said, what's that? He said, when I walked in, he was like, Stone, you're not going to believe this. He said, the football people that put on the football games, they have now decided to try to watch all the games at one time. And Jay was like, what are you talking about? Feels like every few seconds they're switching to another game. Of course, Jay then realized that there's a channel called the NFL Red Zone. And it was designed for fantasy football. And Phil, somehow or another, you thought or you got to that channel. So I was just going to see what your experience was instead of taking his word for it.
It was the biggest bunch of bull I've ever seen in my life. You'd be looking, and I'd say, well, what team is that? And they'd go from there to the next one, to the next one. So you just see just excerpts, just little excerpts.
Yeah.
From this group, this team, that team. I would look at their helmets and say,
who is that now? Was it like you were 30 seconds behind the whole time?
That's it.
Well, look, in your defense, my wife and I watched the same thing yesterday because she loves football.
You saw that.
Well, I watch it every week on purpose. I like it. But we watched the Saints game first. You can find a game in your area that shows the game. We watched that. But then she was just in the football spirit, and she was so excited that the Saints just absolutely destroyed Carolina.
Yep.
She started watching it, but about 20 minutes in, she said, babe, I'm not sure I can watch this. I said, what do you mean? She's like, everything's happening so fast. I can't figure out who did what, where. I'm trying to process what just happened, and they're already on to the next thing. She said, it's really giving me
You get 1 minute of one group, the next minute of another group, and they'd get out on the 5-yard line. Then there's another bunch. They're over. He's scoring a touchdown. I mean,
look,
they were trying to show. I mean, with every group, I mean, they had about three or four teams at a time.
Yeah, they split screen. They'd have 4 screens.
Oh, yeah. Well, the reason they call it the red zone is because every time a team enters the 20-yard line toward the goal line, they're switching to them. So you're watching every NFL team in the red zone at the same time, Dad.
But if there's 4 teams in the red zone, they show all 4. Oh, you have to pick a box now. Yeah. So, look, I met the guy who's the commentator for that, and I want you to think about, if you thought what you experienced was that maddening, this guy sits there for 7 hours without a commercial break.
Yeah.
And calls every game as it happens.
I saw it.
I met him.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's actually a believer in the Lord. And
really?
Wonderful guy. Scott Hansen is his name. And he's unashamed of his faith, so I feel like I can say that. But it made me think, which I didn't ask him the question when I met him, but I wanted to. I mean, if you talk for 7 hours, there's no bathroom, there's no snack, there's no water. I mean, because my first thought was, is there a bucket under that table?
Yeah, I was trying to watch it go.
Pocket catheter.
It was moving so much, and one team to the next, and I mean.
But if that guy hasn't won an award,
that's right.
Or he should.
He should win an Emmy.
Yeah, I think so.
So and also yesterday was Tom Brady's first. Of course, this will release a week away, but it was his first broadcast, I guess. Unless he did some preseason stuff, but I had never heard him. But he was good. He was pretty good. I didn't. You never know these guys how they're going to be. Like, and he kept saying, I'm just a rookie now. I'm learning as I go here. But I thought he was insightful. He did the Cowboys Browns game. But I wanted to tell my favorite mom and dad story. So his mom loves football as much as dad does. So they watch it together. But last year during the playoffs, I came in and they were watching this game. And they were like, Al, can you believe this game? Mom was like, can you believe this game? And of course, I realized that the game, like it wasn't time for a playoff game. And so I was like, well, who is it? And it was like, well, it's the 49ers and the Eagles. And they're
Last year?
Yeah, it was from the year before.
Well, Phil,
And Mom was watching. She was like, I just don't know what's going to happen. I said, do you want me to tell you? Because I know exactly how this is going to end.
well, what's funny is I caused you those problems, Phil, because Kay called me and she said, I can't find the game. And I was like, what do you mean? You can't find the game? And I thought she meant the Saints game and whatever it was on, I said. But she just hung up on me, and Missy was like, oh boy, what does that mean? So I guess that led y'all to the NFL red zone.
Yeah.
So I guess that was my bad. I should have been a little more clear. But technology has its challenges. It made me think, though, not too long ago, Missy had a situation where in the early morning, her parents had come over to our house and they were describing like handling their finances and all. And they started talking about receipts and, there's boxes full of receipts. And my wife was like, there's at this stage of technology, you don't have to have boxes full of receipts at all. You can just go to a digital account and that is your receipt. And I remember her dad was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, and she logged into their bank, and pulled it up. And when he saw that, because he's got boxes of like every transaction, there's a box, with a receipt. His response to that was like, whoa, wow. And we were kidding around because we were like, we also have cell phones and computers, and it was like, whoa, when did this happen, And so we laughed and they were good spirits about it. It was just like all this time and effort and worry and all. And it was like she fixed that in a minute. In 1 minute, it's like moving forward. Here's how you do this. And they were just incredibly grateful. And then it wasn't an hour later, and one of our kids called because somebody had committed fraud on them and got into their account, so they had to shut everything down. So she couldn't use her card and all, and she was so stressed out because it's like, Mom, I don't know what to do. And Missy, in some moment in that, because I was listening to the call, she's like, well, you can just walk into a bank and say who you are and show your ID, and they'll give you money out of your account. And she was like, they will? And I just thought there in that moment of all the relationships we have, you have two extremes, the one who knows nothing about technology, and then the other one who doesn't realize you can actually talk to a human being and say, look, my account's been shut down. Can you give me some money? And they're like, yeah. And it was the same response. Wow. I can get money out of the bank without putting it into a machine?
Yep.
It happens. They're like, no way. When did that start happening? It's just like, that's been happening all along. You just missed it.
So I guess, all the time we talk about the importance of life, but anytime there's a political season, election years, you hear about it more at a national level. But Zach, I've always thought that, to be pro-life means that you're pro-humanity. I mean, if you can abort babies and think that's somehow a winning political hand, you really begin to go down this kind of slippery slope of not really appreciating life and the importance of it. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's why I love our sponsor here, because it actually allows these women to see their child. And I think that's such a beautiful thing.
Preborn stands as a beacon of hope for the most defenseless among us, and that's preborn babies. Every day, Preborn's network of clinics rescues, on average, over 200 babies while surrounding expectant mothers with God's love and offering a free ultrasound. So as you said, Zach, once you see that baby, the miracle of life is now right there for you to be able to bring into this world. And that's what we're trying to do. So we want you guys to join in, help Preborn in protecting the least among us. For just $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound and give a mother the chance to choose life, not only for her baby, but also for herself. An ultrasound doubles a baby's chance at life. So let's join together and help mothers choose life. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/unashamed. That's preborn.com/unashamed. So so it's opening weekend of football, which is big, because we love watching football. Unfortunately for me, we're also moving, which is not good. And because I don't know if it's like this for all men, but for me, and y'all will probably agree, like I'm really good at hauling stuff off, tearing down boxes, moving stuff into the house, just kind of grunt work. But I can't tell you where anything should go at all. And I really don't care about anything. So yesterday, this is the first day of football games, and there are 4 women, 4, and they're all helping Lisa, 3 other ones plus Lisa, and deciding where stuff goes. And they want me to comment, they keep asking me about it. And so first I was going to try to stay in there and watch a game, and I realized that it can't be done because it's just maddening. Plus they moved this. Al, can you come pick this up? And we're going to try to, they moved the couch. They put lamps in the place 4 times. So finally I just left. I went downstairs. I found another TV, and they were like, well, we didn't know where you've been gone for 2 hours. I said, yeah, that was on purpose. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to take it anyway, but this is all happening during the first football games, is putting stuff up in the house. And it was a nightmare. It was like the worst possible man place to be was at my house yesterday.
That's funny. Well, I mean, with my wife, she loves Phil's situation the same way. I mean, my wife loves it just as much. And so I've seen when people come over, she's like, okay, you can watch football with us, or can this wait? I mean, we're fixing to watch this game.
Yeah, Lisa doesn't care about it.
Which is funny, but we enjoy it. And it all started in our life when our kids started playing football, because it brought all of us together. I mean, that's what we talked about. And so once she understood the game, and we support all things Louisiana because that's where we're from. So we watch the Saints and LSU and different things like that.
Well, Alex, so Corbin decided to play football this year, and he's never played. Baseball has been his thing. And so I called Alex, they had a scrimmage Saturday, and I was like, so tell me, what's going on? Because I wasn't there, so I wanted to know what was happening. And I said, is he playing offense or defense? I don't know. I haven't really. And first I said, what position? She said, I don't really know the positions. Yeah. I'm like, well, is he on offense or defense? I don't know. I don't think he's in there. I'm not sure what his number is.
I just felt like it was too much
hoopla.
Yeah. It was too much.
Yeah. I get it. It's not for everybody, but people like me.
They change the teams.
Yeah, people like me who do fantasy leagues and all that. It's fun for us because we know everybody, and we're just seeing if they score. I mean, I'm a Saints fan, but I'm also a fan of the dudes that I have on my team because I'm trying to win. So if they score, I score.
Cutting off and starting and this group, that group, this.
Yeah,
group,
I'm with you,
group.
Dad. I don't like it. I quit doing fantasy football because it took away my enjoyment of just watching a game.
Oh yeah.
Well, they've been doing it about 15 years, so somebody likes it.
Oh, it's huge. Does. It's huge. Yeah. In fact, Corbin, I was saying my grandson's 10 years old. He drafted his own team. And he won his first game. I mean, the young boy knows the stats and
it's literally anyone can do. Yeah, in my league, I mean, there's kids, and and it's embarrassing if you're getting beat by a kid. But literally, it's just luck. You get the players. Right. So they have formulated drafts that tell you who to pick.
Well, Jace, you and I hadn't thought about it a long time. We used to have a church fantasy football when it first started. And me, you, and Willie were because you couldn't hardly get in. Everybody was trying to get
it. Never left. The name of our team was the Cartel, and guess what? The Cartel has never left.
So you are the Cartel now.
No, me and Cole. Well, the
Oh, okay.
cartel went from 3 brothers to now father and son.
Okay.
And we
So
actually won the
that league
league
is still
2 years
going.
ago. Oh, it's still going. Oh, it's a waiting list to get in it.
Yeah, you couldn't get in. That's why we had to
Yeah.
go in together and become the cartel, which was the coolest
I
name.
was in with Willie at one point.
Yeah, because Willie couldn't deal with me and Jace. He was, Willie doesn't play well by not being the big boss.
Well, both of you have been disfellowshipped, and now you just got kicked out due to lack of.
Trust me, I don't mind because I did not like it.
It was a touchdown only league or something.
Yeah.
Junk
It still is, and it's the greatest league in the world. We're dinosaurs that people, once they experienced it, they like it better than all this fantasy junk that's out
with
there
the
today.
Points and all that.
Oh, they have points, and it doesn't make sense. Ours are a real football game. If your guy scores, you score. So all these touchdown vultures they called in other fantasy leagues, those are prize recruits for our league, and that's the way it should be.
That's the way it was.
We're playing football here. Get it across the goal
you gotta
line.
keep in mind, when that league was started, there was no calculations. It was all calculated based on what was in the paper. So you had to go in and do the work. There was there wasn't like now. It's all done for you, so you can have. I mean, they're calculating yards.
No, we're still doing the work because
back when we used to do the March Madness, and I started our March Madness league. Literally, I had to compute the scores after every round. Yeah. And so it was up to it was a ton of work, but it was way more fun. Like Jay said, it was much more organic to the sport as opposed to now it's just plug it in a computer and I don't know.
My whole point for bringing this up, because people say, well, what's the point of all this? Look, any time spent with your loved ones, especially your kids, because this is unlike any other thing that I can think of, because most people say quality time is better than quantity. But not with your kids. With your kids, quantity is the quality. And so
that's true.
I find different ways, to be in my kids' lives, especially when they get older. And, my son Cole, he doesn't say a whole lot. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
So, you think of creative ways to get involved where you're spending time with your kids. So,
and look, it works both ways, Jace, because mom will call me like during a game and are you watching this game? And I said, yeah, I'm watching. She said, can you believe Patrick Mahomes, what he just did? I mean, like this is my 76-year-old mom, calling me about football. And you're right. I mean, I love it. It's great. Because
she called the other night and we laughed so hard we almost peed in our pants. Because she talked for 15 minutes. I had her on speaker, and we were all watching the game. And I never said a word besides, yep. She talked 15. She just started into the game, and I went, yep. Did you see that? Yep. Yeah, and it went on. And then we all started getting tickled. I went, yep. And then at the end, I thought she was going to say, well, how are you doing? She was like, all right, I got to go. Bye. And we laughed and laughed. And Missy said, you never said a sentence for 15 minutes. I was like, nope.
Well, you know what? It's the same thing with Dad, except no yep. Just silence. I've seen Dad just sit there looking at her, and she's talking.
That was pretty funny.
That's funny.
I think it's a good, the things that last are the fundamental principles, and I think it's love, which has been the theme of Ephesians.
So we're always excited when there's new podcasts that come out that are biblically grounded like ours is, and one of those is our good friends at Focus on the Family have a new podcast, and it's called Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. And really, Jim is such a good guy. He's been on our podcast before. We've been on his show before. Focus has been around, encouraging and strengthening families through the Bible for decades. And so they're great folks. Every episode of Focus on the Family is designed to help you confidently guide your loved ones through the unique challenges faced by today's Christian families. With decades of trusted, compassionate stories of redemption, Jim Daly connects you to biblically sound advice on marriage and parenting that is relatable, practical, and also interesting. It's not just another podcast, it's a lifeline to making your family better. So whether you're dealing with everyday issues or searching for guidance on more complex matters, Focus on the Family is there to support you every step of the way. So I want you to check it out on your favorite podcast platform, or you can visit focusonthefamilywithjimdaly.com and start making a difference in your family's life today. That's focusonthefamilywithjimdaly.com. Trust us, you won't regret it. Let's read the first 9 verses, Jace.
All right, you want to read, Zach? You want to read it in your version?
Yeah, read yours because I'm
I'm curious to see what yours, how it uses.
Read 6, 1 through 9, Zach.
We're in this little book called Ephesians.
Yeah, Zach. On this podcast, we study the Bible. So
the Bible.
Yeah, the Bible. So most of us have our Bibles open.
So you said 6, 1 through 9.
Yep.
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Bondservants, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart as you would Christ, not by the way of eye service as people pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man, knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or is free. Masters, do the same to them, and stop your threatening, knowing that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and that there is no partiality with him.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So just to reset from the contextual part of this, we've been talking about husbands and wives, and Paul basically does these 3 illustrations of this idea of submission to Christ. And really the whole text is about Christ and the church, but these are illustratively used to show how the relationships matter. So we talked about marriage first. Now it's parenting inside the home, and this works both ways. It's both for children, even adult children, and their relationship with their parents and vice versa. And then he gets into this situation with the bondservants, which I like better because the NIV says slaves, but that's the word itself is so toxic, it's hard to even have a discussion. But bondservant is much closer to the sort of domestic situation that was going on. So anyway, that's just to set it up.
Yeah, and as an overview, continuing that thought, so most people, when they read this about the bondservants or slaves, it's immediately, well, now why in the world would God be promoting slavery? I think that's the question that I've heard many times from people who don't believe in God. But in their family units back at this time, and the reason I was glad we talked about technology and all the things we've talked about, these were the family units back in the day. And for where we have electricity and, all these inventions, telephones and computers, and back in their day, people functioned as those amenities. And what's crazy is it wasn't really based on anything other than a need for money, or, if your country lost a war, then the people that you were fighting became your servants. If you couldn't pay your debts, you'd go to prison, and, then your family would have to serve some other family to pay off the debt. And it's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And
it was much more domestically driven. That's why when you read about the household, I mean, it was part of their family, their household. And you'll even see people who were converted in Acts, and that was everybody. I mean, that was the people that worked for them, the indentured servants, everybody. So the first century situation and what we're reading about here is way different than 19th and 20th century slavery, where basically you were just abducting people and then selling them and not even looking at them as people. I mean, this is a whole different situation. But
or based on their color or race. Yeah, it was just absolutely an atrocity. And I'm sure that even in their setting, there were abusers and bad
Oh, yeah.
situations. But
No doubt.
so to me, it makes, and a lot of that, I think N.T. Wright does a good job of explaining this, because it's the same vein of that with, technology and indoor plumbing or getting water. And I mean, now you turn on the faucet, but, back in their day, somebody got to go get it. Well, you pay them, and they live with you all from room and board or whatever, how it works. But I see similarities even in our economic world to this, because when you think about authority figures, well, we've all had jobs, and the guy's the boss, and basically I'm his servant. I worked construction for a while. Well, I showed up. Guess what? He told me where to go, what to do, and there was no doubt that he was in charge. And if I, didn't like it, well, I get fired, kicked out. But to me, now how he treated me and how bosses treat people, it's going to come to these same spiritual principles that interlock faith and the character of
and
God.
remember, Jase, you're exactly right. These are used illustratively. Therefore, the application in our world today is exactly what you just described. We understand management and bosses and employers and employees and how we treat one another. And remember, this whole context starts out by saying, look, in Christ, we're one. So what happens if your boss is, a believer and you are as well? Then whether he's your boss or not, or she's your boss or not, you're one in Christ, but you still have a responsibility. You're trying to run a company. You're trying to make money. Decisions have to be made. And his point is, however you make these decisions, whether you're the employee or the employer, you want to do it as Christ would do it. You want to have that same attitude and that same mindset. So,
and I want to throw into that point, because you see a hint of that. What Paul does do that is different from people who are just trying to use this as some evidence that, there's no God or whatever, is he does something really different in that he speaks to the people in charge in both of these examples that we're at today as like, you have a responsibility. I mean, if it was just about them being in charge, mother and fathers being in charge, he wouldn't say, fathers, do not exasperate your children.
Yeah.
Well, he's talking to them, saying, don't do that. When he got to the bond servants, he said, don't threaten them. Well, he said, you have a responsibility wherever you're at, and whatever, I'm using the word authority. I don't know if there's a better word for that, but whatever role you have as the leader or the one in charge, in quotations, you have a responsibility to be like Christ. And that's why I said that trickles down to your job, and even in church settings with pastors, and anybody can be abusive and ungodly in any situation.
Yeah.
And so as members of Jesus, and us humbling ourselves to do that, we find ourselves in these societal and family roles that we do. And how you use that and navigate it should reflect God and who Jesus is.
There are passages in the Bible, even in the New Testament, that actually forbid slavery. One of them is in 1 Timothy 1:10. It forbids slave traders as being people in opposition to the gospel. There's a passage, I believe, in Exodus about when you kidnap someone into slavery, which is what happened in the transatlantic slave operation. So this is, and so I would say, first of all, that what we know of as slavery was never condoned in the scripture. And two, even what we see is more of a concession to a cultural, economic setup that they had, the way they were conducting business and the way they were dealing with debt structures and stuff. But it wasn't God's plan, just like polygamy was never God's plan.
Or divorce.
Divorce was never God's plan. It's the whole concession that Moses made when he gave the certificate of divorce.
Correct.
That's Jesus' whole point was, he gave you a concession because your hearts were hard. So you can't read a lot of this that we're reading. We can't read into it that God's saying, oh yeah, that's good. We want more of that. I condone that. A lot of this is a concession of our heart, and then dealing with the economic reality of what they were in, and then speaking the gospel into that. But make no mistake about it, if you go back and look at the abolishment of slavery in the U.S., and you go back and watch read the Lincoln Douglas debates, the argument that Lincoln was making in those debates was an argument from Scripture. It was an argument from the Imago Dei, meaning in Genesis 1:26, man is made in the image of God. And so the question he was asking are these people men or not? And the answer, they're men. Okay, then the Imago Dei applies to them. What was written in the Declaration of Independence applies to them. And then when you move forward into even the civil rights movement, if you go read Letter from a Birmingham Jail that Martin Luther King Jr. wrote from a jail cell in Birmingham, he appealed to the same exact argument. He's going back to quote Thomas Aquinas and other spiritual intellectuals, Christian intellectuals throughout history who have made this argument. So it's actually been the argument from Scripture of what does it mean to be human. It's that argument out of Genesis 1:26, 1:27. That's been the anchor for how we've actually seen advancements in civil rights and the abolishment of slavery. So it would be people would be misreading the Scripture if they think that God is condoning slavery. I don't believe he is condoning slavery, particularly as we know it.
So one of the things that you're hearing a lot about these days, especially in election year, is inflation. And it really has a way of eating into your savings. And, obviously people are having a hard time with that. One of our new sponsors, Alpine Gold, have come up with something that can help you to start earning a competitive return on precious metal leases that allow investors to protect against inflation. You can earn a competitive return at the same time, and you won't find any other offers like this. Every other precious metal IRA is lacking this one thing. That's why Alpine Gold offers gold leases that pay you in gold. Everyone is eligible to start with returns up to 3.5% APY. Alpine Gold now offers members the ability to enroll in their lease program directly on the UPMA account portal for gold coins, goldbacks, and silver. Zach, you got some of those goldbacks, don't you, to show folks?
I got them right here. I got about 5 of them.
So the goldback is the world's first physical interchangeable gold money that is designed to accommodate even small transactions. With goldbacks, you don't need someone else's approval to spend it. You don't have to specify where they can be spent or what they can be spent on. They're anonymous. There's no need to know who you are to spend them. For the first time in human history, you can spend physical gold on small transactions, from a smoothie to a remodel of your home. This solves the 2,600-year-old small coin problem with spending gold. Alpine Gold is proud to offer the industry's best pricing for goldbacks, an inflation-resistant currency that is made of gold. Buy, spend, or grow your gold holdings with goldbacks. When you buy 100 goldbacks and lease them, Alpine Gold Exchange will give you 5 goldbacks on your first lease payment. Payments occur 1 month after your lease begins. There's a limit of 1 payment per person. Learn more about goldbacks by visiting alpinegold.com. Use the promo code Unashamed to receive free shipping on orders over $200. That's alpinegold.com. Use the promo code Unashamed. He's not, and you're exactly right. It goes against the principle that we started here, that we're unified. He says there's neither male nor female, slave nor free. He brings the idea we're human beings. We all have the opportunity to follow him. Slavery was wrong in America because there were laws written that said human beings weren't a full person. They were 3/5 of a person. Well, that tells you right off the bat that the whole system was off. I want to read a quote from MacArthur I came across when I was researching this, and I thought it was really good. He said, New Testament teaching does not focus on reforming and restructuring human systems, which are never the root cause of human problems. The issue is always the heart of man, which when wicked will corrupt the best of systems, and when righteous will improve the worst. If men's sinful hearts are not changed, they will find ways to oppress others, regardless of whether or not there's actual slavery. And I think he's right on target. That's why the Bible goes at the heart of people, because when that is changed, then the results and the attitudes change after that. And you would never be able to say I can accept slavery or people aren't a full human being. That's insane.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was going to read the same passage out in Galatians 3 where you said that. And there's other passages. The 1 Corinthians 12 says the same thing about, because that's always, it's kind of like this analogy that we're married to Jesus. Oh, and then how shall we show Christ in our earthly marriage? And it's the same way in the church. That's always the backdrop, that there's not male or female or slave or free or Jew or Greek, or, where you're from. That's always a reflection of, well, how should our churches look? So we immediately go to Sunday morning, but, when we gather up at the temple, we talked about that last podcast. But your community, the church should look like your community. I mean, that's just the way it should look. So, to me, if it's different races and different types of people, well, that's what the church is going to look like, because that's who we share Jesus with, whoever you're in earshot of.
There's somebody guiding the entire thing, and it's either God or not God.
Exactly.
And unless it's something ungodly, right, we voluntarily submit ourselves in those situations, either to earn a check or for whatever reasons that we decide to do it. I ran across an interesting stat, Jase. You were talking about earlier about the domesticated situations of the first century, and it was estimated that in Roman world, 25 to 40% of the entire population were indentured servants in the Roman culture. So you think about it, that's a quarter to almost half of the people in that system were a part of what we're talking about. So of course, when you read the Bible, then Paul's going to go at the attitudes. I mean, that's affected by a lot of people. And so he's telling them, no matter what your circumstances, situations, and this is a new thing, Christianity is just going full force and entire households are coming to Christ. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what am I going to do? Because my boss or, my owner or whatever the situation it was that they were in, how am I going to relate my Christianity in these settings and situations? So it would have been a very real discussion affecting people's lives, just like it's hard for us to even imagine having that discussion in the 21st century, but in their day, it was very real.
Exactly.
Good point.
But that's why I said it comes back to love, because when you look at Jesus' example, there was nothing that love itself could be capable of that he didn't prove out. And that's why when you look at what love is, it's this self-sacrifice, this surrendering, and you read 1 Corinthians 13, that gives a great definition of that, and putting that into your relationships wherever you are, in their world. And it goes both ways. That's why Paul is even challenging the guys in charge of the servants. And, it gets down to the end, which Zach's version says, and he doesn't show partiality, which the NIV says favoritism, which I like that word, because it's like, well, God doesn't show favoritism. We shouldn't either. I think it's a key point, because you know what the underlying problem with all this is, where all the problems in society happens, is when other people think they're better than other people.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
And you can come up with 1,001 reasons why they come up with it, but at the end of the day, that's where really sin starts to show itself, when you look at anybody, and think you're better than them.
We started our business back in the day, Jase. It was we didn't have a lot of money, but we just kind of lived off of what we had, right? Living off the land. I mean, that's kind of a mine and yours upbringing. Is that safe to say?
I think that's a fair assessment. We didn't have much money, and we had a lot of debt.
And that's how our company started. And unfortunately, as I grew into my own life, I wrestled with this idea of debt. At least I did, big time. And it creates a lot of stress, not only in your life, but on your marriage and on your family. And so, you're staring at that stack of unpaid bills and you think, how can I earn this much money and still be this far in debt? And I've been there. I've asked that question. Thanks to COVID and inflation, 1 in 4 Americans have maxed out their credit cards, which is not good. because that's a temporary solution that will not work. So now you're trapped in debt. There seems to be no way out, but there may be. We're fans of Better Debt Solutions, one of our new sponsors, and I'll tell you why. Not all debt settlement companies are created equal. Better Debt Solutions has saved their clients over $1.5 billion. That's $1.5 billion less than their clients owed. Better Debt Solution impressed me with its fast-acting strategies designed to put money back in your pocket in 1 month if you qualify for the program. You need someone to stand between you and the bill collectors to stop the threats and harassing calls, and that's Better Debt Solutions. They, along with their partners, implement your personalized plan with one main goal: reduce your credit card and personal loan debt. Some of these strategies are time sensitive, though, so you need to move quickly. Trust Better Debt Solutions to help settle your debt faster and easier than you thought possible. Go to betterdebtnow.com/Phil for your free consultation. That's betterdebtnow.com/Phil, betterdebtnow.com/Phil. It is interesting, Jace, that you brought up a minute ago that Jesus is the ultimate example. And it's interesting that in all of these illustrations, Jesus is at the center of the illustration. Husband and wife, you say, well, Jesus was never married. Yeah, but it says the church is like his bride. I mean, that's how he treats it.
Yeah, he is married now.
He is married. And then when it becomes the children discussion, you think about what he did. He's the Son of God. He realizes remember back when he was 12 years old, that he even knew then he had a special purpose. But what did he do? He obeyed Mary and Joseph. I mean, this is the Son of God that submitted himself to his earthly parents while knowing that he had a plan and that he had a Father in heaven. So not only did he submit to the Father in heaven and do his will on earth, he had submitted to his earthly parents as well. And then when you look at this situation about serving, he told his disciples, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. And so he shows in every one of these situations the proper example.
I think that if you try to make sense of this whole context out of your point, you got to go back to that Ephesians 5:1, because this was all coming after that. So the idea here is you're going to imitate somebody. I talked about this in a previous podcast. Your desires you're going to mimic somebody, and what Paul's saying is mimic God. Be imitators of God as beloved children. And then he defines what that mimicking is, that imitation is. He says, walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So when you go to these passages or these examples of different kind of applications of what that looks like, if you notice each position that he's mentioning here, he's really just saying whatever position you're in, then you need to be laying down yourself. If you're children, guess what? You need to be obeying your parents. And you need to honor your mom and dad. Okay, parents, dads, you don't need to provoke your children. So you can kind of see that depending on who he's talking to, it's a different instruction, but it really fits both into what he says in Ephesians 5, which is give yourself up. Be like Jesus. Be like Christ, who gave himself up for you. So children, you need to do the same thing with your parents.
It's
Fathers,
better for everyone. It's
better for everyone. Whoever I'm talking to, it's almost like Paul saying, whatever position you're in, like imitate who Jesus is. Be imitators of God. This is just practical application of what he already instructed in Ephesians 5:1. He's just now giving us practical positional a positional prescription, basically, of how we live this out.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's also redefining love. I mean, I go back to love as the bedrock because, when people read 1 Corinthians 13, they usually think, oh, it's flowery, love is patient, it's kind, it doesn't envy, doesn't boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Well, if you put that in any relationship, it's going to be godly, no matter what the situation is. But that next phrase, because all the people who come to these passages and try to blame God or say, well, this can't be right, But that 1 Corinthians 13:6 says, love does not delight in evil. And I always
good.
bring that up. When it comes to racism, that's evil. When it comes to a man abusing his wife in any way, well, that's evil.
Yep.
When parents abusing their kids. So whatever you think on that lines, we know what true evil is. And as lovers, that makes us angry. And it's supported here. And so there is a time to clean out the temple and say, no, well, this is not right. And so I think that always has to be an anchor in these discussions. I mean, being a leader of your family, sometimes you get angry if evil crops up in any way. And I really want to stress that, because we just have definitions of love like it's just something we fall in and out of, but it's having difficult conversations. It's always been on the prowl to keep evil out of any situation, whether it's at the workplace or in your family or with your kids. And so you identify that, because that next phrase says, but rejoices with the truth. And God is truth, God is love, and that should be, the background to where we make these decisions.
Well, you just think about how Christ nourishes us. That word exasperate, the New English Bible says, do not goad your children to resentment, which is, I love that phrase. God nourishes us, and he did it through Christ. And that word that says, bring them up in the admiration of in the Lord, that word there, that Greek word, is the same one earlier that talked about a husband taking care of his wife as his own body, to feed and care. So I love this idea that in Christ we're nourished with everything, whether it's not just physical, but it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual. It's a way to help other people go. I love your verse, Jase, about the evil, which, by the way, is exactly where we're going, where Paul goes in the next context, that your husband or your wife or your children or your parents or your boss or your employee are not your enemies. Yeah. But we do have one.
Well, I know we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to throw this in. That same principle, because a lot of times, like when people come to me and they're like, it's a husband, he's like, I'm struggling with pornography. And I usually ask the first question I ask, I say, well, don't you love your wife? And he's like, oh yeah, well, I love my wife. And I go to this 1 Corinthians 13. Look, God has put you to your number one job is to protect your family and present her as holy and blameless, and your kids. That they're disassociating I love my wife with when you're looking at pornography, that's evil. Would you agree with that? They're like, well, yeah, that's evil, Well, if you're going to say I love my wife, there's your motivation. And we hadn't even got to the part of you love your husband, which is Jesus. And so it never delights in evil, and you have to use that as a basis. I wanted to get that in there.
No, that's good. All right, we're out of time. We'll pick it up next time on Unashamed.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.